Welcome to Cherry Red TV, and today we have a very special interview with Jayne County, who Cherry Red has acquired the rights to her early material on Safari Records. And we have actually a great box set which we put out earlier on this year, which we're going to talk about some of these songs. And also want to mention at this stage that a lot of the research I did for the interview came from this book, which is really quite a fascinating read. So, Jayne, I'm going to start in your early days when you were still very young, and you say in the book that when you were a young boy, you actually felt like a young girl, and that must have been very, very strange at that time, because that was not something that was at all known, was it?
Yeah, it did. It was strange. I knew something was up, but I didn't know exactly what, because my first remembrances go back to like 5 and 6 years old when I had little playhouses with mud cakes in the yard and playing with dolls and baby carriages. And my Aunt Shirley would put a headscarf on me and a skirt and parade around the neighborhood with me dressed up in her clothes, which probably made quite an indention in my mind. But I knew from an early age, because the neighbors would come out and ooh and ah, and I knew from an early age that I could get attention also by what you would call, people would term, I guess, cross-dressing. But of course, when I was older, I realized it was more than being just a cross-dresser. But when I was a little kid, I didn't know anything about anything. So I knew that I could get attention from people and lots of oohs and ahs and everything by pushing doll carriages around and wearing a headscarf and women's clothes. That's how it really started. But I felt like a little girl. I didn't. When they wanted me to wear boys' clothes to school, it was really bad for me because I didn't want to wear them. But it was explained to me that I could not wear girls' clothes to school. At 6 years old in 1950, whatever it was, 1950. And so that's how it started, really, with me just trying to get attention for myself. And I did, but I didn't really feel like a boy. I felt like a little girl.
Yeah, and of course your mother was in this strange cult.
Oh,
which,
yes.
Was very restrictive, and you weren't allowed to celebrate Christmas or birthdays.
Yeah, that came a little later when I was in my early teens. She converted, but at the beginning she was still religious, but we were Methodists. Methodists are still kind of Southern Methodists they're not as bad as Southern Baptists, but they're still quite strict. And I was raised in Methodist church, and then after that she joined the cult, and she tried to get me to come into the cult, but I always kind of resisted. I went along with it for a while, yeah. We couldn't celebrate Christmas or Easter because they were Babylonian. They had their origin in Babylon. The Christmas tree was a sign of Nimrod marrying his mother, and the evergreen tree represented the Babylonian bloodline. And so we weren't supposed to have Christmas trees because they were the sign of Nimrod marrying his mother. And so the Christmas trees in this cult she was in was just absolutely blasphemous. And every Christmas there'd be fights with my father dragging in the Christmas tree, ordering us kids to decorate it, and then my mother screaming and running into the room and saying, "Don't decorate that tree. It's a symbol of Nimrod marrying his mother," and all this stuff. So we'd have to throw the tree out in the yard, and then Dad'd get mad, drag the tree back in again, put it back up, and then she'd tear it back down again. And the kids, me and my little brother, would be caught sitting on the couch, waiting to decorate the tree, which was the Christmas tree was causing such a furor in the family.
It was not an easy childhood for you, was it?
No, it was really hard. It was really a hard childhood. I had, it seemed like obstacles was kind of like thrown in my path since childhood and since going on in my adult life. I don't know. It just seems like there's always somebody hiding behind a bush or hiding behind the door, ready to throw some kind of obstacle in my way, and to keep me from doing what I want to do. And sometimes my mother used to say, "That's God. God's telling you, He's throwing obstacles in your way. He's telling you that the path you're on is wrong, and you should convert to God and please God and not Babylon, you know. And then I had to deal with that. Oh God.
And music, when you found rock and roll music, I think your mother brought you a transistor radio.
My Aunt Shirley.
And through that you found people like Little Richard, who you could identify with.
Well, my Aunt Shirley bought me a transistor radio, and it changed my life. It was just a little blue radio, a little small one with a little gold thing, and it was just an AM radio, and you only picked up certain stations. And there were only 2 rock and roll stations in Atlanta, and WQXI is the one I listened to, because later on WQXI became the British invasion channel. They played all the British bands and all the British groups, which when I was a teenager I was really into the whole British invasion thing, the whole British, dressing British, trying to speak British, buying British music, trying to be a mod. All of that came later when I was a teenager.
Yeah, and you taught yourself to play the harmonica.
Yeah, by listening to Brian Jones, and then later by buying Muddy Waters albums and Little Walter. Little Walter was that was a real find for me, buying Little Walter. That song Jute he has, and my babe's got a whole lot of loving on my babe. And that made a real impression with me, early blues did. Thanks to the Rolling Stones pointing that out to me, because it had been lost when the record companies began to water the music down again, and real rock and roll like Little Richard and Larry Williams and Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters and all those people were kind of out, and they were putting in Frankie Avalon and Fabian and all these watered down rock and roll bands that were more controllable and were more mainstream. So the real rock and roll bands like Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters, who was a blues man, and everything were kind of pushed back because they were too risque, and white people did not want their children listening to this really infuriating black music, because they were afraid of the influence that black people would have over their white children. That was basically a lot of, oops, I knocked something. That was basically a lot of what a lot of that trouble was about. A lot of white people, like white supremacists that lived in Georgia, because there's big Ku Klux Klan in Georgia and everything, did not want their children listening to black music. So they had all these watered down white. They had Pat Boone singing Little Richard. I mean, Pat Boone singing Good Golly Miss Molly, and Pat Boone singing, Little Richard songs was just like pathetic, I mean, my aunt used to buy his records, and because she liked him because Pat Boone was cute. But I had the original recordings. The original Larry Williams and Little Richard recordings were so much better. But then they tried to foster Pat Boone on us. But I was wise to that. I was pretty wise to my music.
At this stage of your life, did you have aspirations to be a musician when you got older?
I guess I had toyed with the idea, but I didn't really think anything serious. I was more an artist. I like to draw pictures and paint and do stuff like that. So I kind of figured I would be some kind of artist when I was a kid. I wasn't sure what. I mean, when I went to New York years later, I went to be an artist. I wanted to be an artist. I was drawing these very Egyptian style kind of art pieces, some of them like I do now. And but then I got turned on to a rock and roll band that were my band Queen Elizabeth, who were playing, and one of Andy Warhol superstars, Jackie Curtis's, plays them Femme Fatale. That's how I got. That was my first rock and roll band, Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, well, you left Atlanta because you were having a few problems, and someone even tried to shoot you. The rednecks.
I left Atlanta. My childhood music helped me get over a lot of things in my childhood, like Jerry Lee Lewis, and I loved, goodness gracious, Great Balls of Fire. And all. My grandmother, Granny Eula, used to work in a cafe up in the middle of Dallas, Georgia, where I was raised, and she would be in the back making hamburgers, and we'd go in there for hamburgers in the afternoon after school. My Granny Eula would make us a hamburger, and we'd go over to the jukebox, and we'd put a quarter in, and you got 3 plays for a quarter. And we'd put on Jerry Lee Lewis, and they still had Chuck Berry on there and everything. And we'd put those on and listen to them and just kind of, rock out at our booth there. That was the only way I had of listening to a lot of great music, because the radio station had stopped playing a lot of the bluesy and real rock and roll stuff by then. But this jukebox at my Granny Eula's cafe had all these original rock and roll hits on it, like Little Richard. We'd go in there and we could hear them,
Well, when you moved to New York, that was you seemed to get pretty quickly involved with the kind of Andy Warhol scene there with Lou Reed and Patti Smith. So you were meeting kindred spirits, I guess, for the first time in terms of the music and alternative lifestyle.
Yes, when I moved to New York, I was on my way really to San Francisco. I wanted to wear flowers in my hair, like the song said. So I wanted to go to San Francisco, and this girl I was going to go that used to hang out with, Sunshine. She was called Sunshine, and we used to take pillowcases and make identical dresses out of the pillowcases and wear them to the be-ins and the hippie be-ins in Atlanta. And we'd be sitting there, everybody be all dressed up, and we'd be sitting there in pillowcases. And even the hippies thought we were weird. We just thought we were trying to blend in with the hippies, but even they thought we were weird. But anyway, so I wanted to go to San Francisco to wear flowers in my hair, because I heard that San Francisco was just all freaks and crazy people and fabulous people and lots of drugs and things. And I said, I want to go there. So I was on my way there. So I stopped off. I was going to stop off in New York City, because I had met these people who told me about New York and said New York is very hip and very cool. It's very, very gay as well. And you have like gay people there aren't like the gay people in Atlanta. The gay people in New York have long hair. And they're all hippied out and they're all freaked out as well. And they hang out at the Stonewall. So I knew all about the Stonewall in Atlanta, Georgia. And so when I went to New York, my goal was to go from New York on the Greyhound bus and just to get off the bus and go to the Stonewall. And that was and I got off the bus in Times Square, of course, and was asking people in Times Square where the Stonewall was, and they had no idea what I was talking about. Finally, I ran into somebody who said, you got to go downtown to Sheridan Square. And so I went downstairs. I got the subway down to Sheridan Square. I got off in at Sheridan Square. Right there at Sheridan Square, it was the Stonewall. The first time I walked through the Stonewall, I was amazed by the people, by the freaky people, and the fabulous jukebox in the corner of the room. They had every kind of music on it. Yes, I felt at home. And the jukebox had all kinds of music on it. It wasn't all divided up into hip hop or classic or R&B or rock and roll or heavy metal. It was just music on the jukebox. You could hear Barbra Streisand and the Doors on one jukebox. Yeah. You could hear it was amazing. I would always play the Doors, of course, or Jimi Hendrix or Janis Joplin or some of the poppy stuff by the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. But and Expressway to Your Heart was a big hit. On the expressway to your heart. It had such a great bass rhythm to it. The bass was like doom 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 doom, and that kind of got me how to write my song. I would start out with the riff of writing a song. I'd get it in my head and go doom 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 doom, and trying to get to you doom doom for a long doom 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 doom. That's how I write my songs, and then Amber translates the songs magically into songs from my riff in my head, and she translates them magically.
But anyway, to keep it sequential, you were in a play called Femme Fatale.
That's right, Femme Fatale,
which went down pretty well, and then that encouraged you to write your own play, Birth of a Nation.
That's right.
Which Cherry and Vanilla played in, and you had a couple of parts, and then Andy Warhol was quite impressed with that, because it was even more outrageous than Pork, because I remember when Pork came to London, it was regarded as a fairly outrageous play, and it kind of that meant you arrived, didn't it? And in terms of people took notice of you.
Yeah, I did Femme Fatale first with Jackie Curtis, who's Andy Warhol superstar. Jackie Curtis, who starred in Andy Warhol's Flesh and Women in Revolt. And then from there we did my play, Birth of a Nation, The Castration of Man, where John Wayne gave birth out of John Wayne gave birth to a baby out his asshole while sniffing poppers. The play was just totally unbelievably over the top that I think if you did it now, you'd probably be arrested, thrown in jail. I don't know how we got away with it. But Andy Warhol came to see this outrageous play and loved it, and he had all these old tapes laying about, and he had recorded all his superstars, the conversations on the telephone. So he handed them to our director Tony Ingracia, who directed World Birth of a Nation, and he transcribed the tapes into a script, which became Andy Warhol's Pork. And we opened at La Mama in New York, and it was a hit. And then a producer came and wanted us to come to England, and we opened Andy Warhol's Pork in England at the Roundhouse.
Yes. And that was when you first met David Bowie, wasn't it? He came along to see the play.
David Bowie came to see the play. But first, we didn't meet. No, that's not the first time we met Bowie. We met him because he was playing a club called, I think, Country Cousins or something like that. And he was, we heard about him because we had heard about Bowie. We saw an article on him in Rolling Stone, and we loved him. He looked like Lauren Bacall. He had this long hair, and it came in over one eye. He wore these big baggy clothes and all. He was a right hippie. And so we went to see him. We said, this guy David Bowie is playing at this little club. We should go. So we went to go, and they all knew who we were. They all had heard about Andy Warhol's Pork and all. They had read all about it. And David was doing his little folk act with Mick Runs, and they were like doing singing their little songs, you know. What's the one he does? Starman. I know he wasn't doing that yet. I don't remember what he was doing. He was doing stuff from Hunky Dory.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And Queen Bitch we loved, of course, because we identified with Queen Bitch. And he told us, he said, the Andy Warhol people are in the audience tonight. Stand up and let us see you. So we all stood up, me and Tony Zanetta, who played Warhol in the play, and Cherry Vanilla. And Cherry Vanilla stood up and popped her tit out and turned around and just sort of giggled and shook. You know, we were all under the impression that because we were starring in Warhol's play that we had to be outrageous. So we had to be something outrageous. We didn't want to disappoint people. So we went to see Bowie, and she popped her tit, and everyone was impressed. And David came to see the play, and his wife Angie came, and we got along with Angie really a lot better than Bowie, because Angie was more forthcoming, and Angie was loud, and she and like that, you know, and David was like, you know, kind of like that. And Angie would be there next to him screaming, going, and he'd be like.
So anyway, and you were signed briefly to Mainman, which was David Bowie's management company with Tony DeFries.
Yeah, well, when DeFries wanted to try to break Bowie in America, he formed the Mainman organization, and he hired many members of the cast of Pork to work Mainman agency. He hired Lee Black Childers, he hired Tony Zanetta, he hired Jamie DiCarlo Lotz, who played Paul Morrissey in Pork, and Lee Childers was the stage manager of Pork. He hired him, and Tony Zanetta played Andy Warhol in Pork. He was hired too. Cherry Vanilla was hired to get publicity, of course, PR. And that's this famous story about how they would send Cherry Vanilla ahead of Bowie's first tour in America. They would send her ahead to get together with DJs to try to get them to play David's records, and she would sometimes give one of the DJs a blowjob to try to get them to play David's records. So she would say, "I'm doing everything for him. You know, I'm even giving blowjobs for him." You know. So when we were dropped years later, I mean, that was one of Cherry's things was, we've been dropped by David. David doesn't seem to like us anymore. Mainman's dropped us all, and I went and gave blowjobs for him to get his record played in America. No one would play it, and I gave blowjobs for him. So we did everything possible to promote David in those days, where he was the #1 freak in America. No one would play him and everything. So we were big supporters of David. We worked for David and tried to do everything we could for him.
And you did some demos which Mainman paid for, and apparently those demos you felt influenced David Bowie.
I did 3 sets of demos for David, and when I first sent the first set of demos for him, he called up Mainman and spoke to Tony DeFries and Lee Childers and said, Wayne is a brilliant songwriter. He's a great songwriter. I really, really love his stuff. Send me some more. So I went into like a fool, went into the studio and recorded more and more. And basically he had every song I'd ever done, early song I've ever done. Max's Kansas City, Wonder Woman, Are You a Boy or Are You a Girl, all my Rock and Roll Resurrection, all my early recordings Bowie had. And they was interested in Bowie producing an album for me. So I even went over to London to talk to David about doing the album, but nothing would ever happen. So I'd go back and he'd go, well, mail me some more demos, and I'd mail him more demos. And basically no album came. But then when David's album started to come out, I started to hear little bits of my demos on some of his songs and things, which were quite upsetting for me. But when I complained about it, people just rolled their eyes and said, oh, the silly drag queen is imagining now that David is doing her stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, I'm not imagining it. I know that came from one of my songs, blah, 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 blah. I know for a fact that when I wrote the song Queen Age Baby, every man's woman, every woman's man, the Queen Age Baby got those Broadway vampires strapped to the mast. Queen Age Baby ain't got no future, oh what a past. It's all about an androgynous creature. You couldn't tell if she was a boy or a girl. And she was running around with purple nails and spiked heels and the whole thing. And then it was a matter of weeks. All of a sudden, David we pick up the phone and David's going, look at this new song I wrote. And he's going, rebel, rebel, boy or girl, can't tell if you're a boy or a girl. And I'm like, that sounds kind of familiar. So I swear to this day that Queen Age Baby, although it doesn't sound like Rebel Rebel because David had all that production, I didn't. But the idea of Rebel Rebel, about the androgynous creature that you couldn't tell if she was a boy or a girl, that was the same creature in Queen Age Baby. So Queen Age Baby is really Rebel Rebel's mother.
Okay. So there was what Mainman did do for you. They financed a play called Wayne at the Trucks.
Wayne at the Trucks, yeah, they financed that.
Which, according to your book, cost $200,000, so it must have been quite a production.
Yeah, it was quite a production. They gave me this show that Tony and Gracia and Tony then had to push Tony DeFries into doing that show. He really didn't want to do it, but they were insisting on doing it. So we did this Wayne at the Trucks show. The band was at the side of the stage to the left, and every single song had a different production number to it and everything. And so when Diamond Dolls came along, the staging and everything, and with the doors that opened behind him and all, were taken from Pork, and then the staging, the band on the left, having the band on the left, was taken from my show, Wayne at the Trucks. So I was like, me and Tony and Gracia, who directed Wayne at the Trucks, we were sitting there and we were watching the show with David's band to the side, and he looked over at me and said, sound familiar? I said, yes, there's something. He's got the band to the side like I had for Wayne at the Trucks. I swear he got the idea, but I don't think he got the idea of that. Someone else from Mainman who worked on the Wayne at the Trucks gave him the idea to put the band to the left of the stage.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got dropped from Mainman.
Yeah.
And you started the band, the Backstreet Boys, afterwards.
When I was dropped from Mainman, not long before Christmas I was dropped and didn't have a place to live or no money coming in or nothing. Just dropped me like a hot potato. I felt really, and I think they expected me to go away. I think they expected me, well, that's it with Wayne County. We've gotten all we can get from him, the influences and all his ideas and blah, blah, blah. But let's just drop Wayne and he'll just go away. But I didn't go away. I started coming back stronger than ever. I formed a band called the Backstreet Boys. By the way, hey, wait a minute. Amber, could you go in there and see what he's doing? Get one of the other cats out of there and just leave him in there. I'm sorry about this. I have a three-legged cat, and he was a.
Got 3 legs, really?
Yeah, he's a terrorist too. And he terrorizes some of the other cats sometimes. Do you have Pickle in there, the striped cat? I mean the black and white cat. Could you bring Pickle in here and leave him in there?
I'm working on it.
Okay, honey. Thank you so much. Amber's doing so much today. Amber.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, A.M. Taylor, who I'm recording with right now. This is my newest stuff. She's brilliant. She knows tech. She knows technology. She knows how to write songs. She knows how to do anything. She's kind of taken me under her wing, really. I don't know what I would do without Amber, really, to tell you the truth. I really.
Anyway, tell me more about the Backstreet Boys.
Well, when we had the Backstreet Boys, I formed the Backstreet Boys, and this was way before the other Backstreet Boys. And the band became I dropped the Queen Elizabeth because their guitar playing was kind of what you consider rinky dinky, and I needed a more heavier sound. So the Backstreet Boys gave me a more heavier sound, a more heavier rock sound. And I played the 82 Club in New York City. I played Max's Kansas City, CBGB's, where I had that big fight with Dick Manitoba. So I started playing all over New York, making waves with the Backstreet Boys. And some people were amazed because they said, well, you've been dropped by Mainman, but you're still going strong. So yeah, I was still going strong in New York City.
And then you got the 3 tracks. You got the 3 tracks on the Max's Kansas City album.
Yeah, I had 3 tracks on the There's 3 tracks on the Max's Kansas City album. Max's Kansas City, Part 1 and 2. Then there's Flip Your Wig, which I came out in a big, huge human wig that I built myself by taking old wigs and tying them around a huge lampshade. I'd come out under the lampshade and sing, baby, you flip your wig. You've really flipped your wig. You're wearing everything but a lampshade. And of course, I was wearing a lampshade. And the other track was a real favorite of the fans. Is You Make Me Cream in My Jeans. That was the original recording of You Make Me Cream in My Jeans. And that done very well for what it was back in those days. And it got a lot of attention with John Peel in England, who I heard was playing some of it on the John Peel
the album was very well received in the UK. Yeah, and it kind of, I think on the back of that, you came back to the UK and you got the deal with IRS Records, Miles Copeland's company. Is that right?
Yes. Well, Miles Copeland came to see me at Max's Kansas City, and he told my manager, Peter Crowley, said, you've got to get Jayne, you got to get Wayne to England. They would really love Wayne in England. See, I was very, I came out of that Bowie thing where I was very theatrical. I was very theatrical on stage and very outrageous, and the scene, my manager, Peter Crowley, said the scene, Miles Copeland had told him that the scene in London was more theatrical. It was more, people were wearing the shirts with the blood and the ties and the ripped clothes and the safety pins, and they were gobbing and going and all that, like they did. And so Miles Copeland said Wayne would be perfect in England. They would love it. So they got me over to England where I played the Roxy. And there were lines around the block for that show. I mean, people came out in droves. The place was packed. And I had lines going around the block. And Johnny Thunders from the Heartbreakers told me, he said, we had to work months and months and months over here in London before we could get a crowd like that. But I just walked into town and got it. Because I had been on the cover of Melody Maker and all that kind of stuff. So I had the right publicity and everything. Anyway, my show at the Roxy in London was a big smash. And the kids loved me. I remember playing. I think my first gig was with X-Ray Specs, and they had the original horn player back then.
Yeah, you play with the Adverts as well, I think too.
I had a little
Yeah.
tiff. I had a little tiff with what's the singer from X-Ray Specs?
Tim. Oh,
No.
X-ray specs, polystyrene.
God, she was a real bitch to me, but you know, I guess she thought she could do it. I turned around, I was a real bitch back to her. You know, she said
Yeah,
something to
anyway.
me. I said, well, this is a really great crowd. And she said, well, not for us. I said, well, perhaps you should lose some weight and work a little harder, bitch. Oh, she was so
Anyway.
mean to me. I know she's an icon and she's fabulous, and the songs, the albums are Worker Genius, and she's fabulous and everything. But she was a real bitch to me, you know.
Yeah. She's departed now, so we can leave her
I
alone.
know, she's departed. I love her now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love you, darling. I'm sorry. Mwah. Don't come back and haunt me.
You had a short tour of the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And you had a support band. Who was that support band on the tour?
Well, I had this incredible support band in England, and the deal was that they could in the Netherlands. We toured the Netherlands, and this band promised us we could use all their fabulous equipment because they had money. We didn't have any. If we would let them tour with us, so we would let them tour with us. And this little touring band that we had opening for us, they were called the Police, who went on to be gigantic.
Yeah.
And that was very funny, and it was like touring with a carload of librarians. They were so super straight-laced and very nice and very mannered and everything, which I could relate to being mannered because I was raised with manners myself.
Yeah.
But we were kind of outrageous and crazy, and my guitar player was drinking all the time, and we had a big fight where somebody opened the van or the door, and I tried to kick him out the van on the motorway going through the Netherlands. You know, and they were out, and the police were out. They were like just in shock. And Greg and I fought constantly, and they were bad fights too, with things being broken and everything. And the police were just in shock of us and our behavior. You know, I think we behaved in true punk style, where the police were like librarians. But the thing is, the police were very serious with what they were doing, and they concentrated on what they were doing, and they went on to become really big mega stars.
Yeah, I think that was the time when they had Fall Out as a single, a bit before Roxanne. Roxanne was the single that broke them in the end.
Right, Roxanne. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think the police were what you'd call necessarily a punk band. But what is a punk band? It's like a lot to do with attitude, I guess. There's so much debate on what's punk, you know. Everybody has their own definition of punk.
Yeah, yeah. So they obviously had the connection because the drummer was Miles Copeland's brother.
That's right.
And Miles Copeland owned the IRS label.
That was the connection, Miles Copeland's brother.
Yeah. Anyway, the first proper record deal you had was with a label called Safari Records.
Safari Records.
A British label, and then the first single they put out was probably your most famous track, "Fuck Off."
It is my most famous track. Is if you don't want to fuck me, baby, fuck off. That's what I'm known for a lot. If you don't fuck me, baby, fuck off. I think the next one would be Cream in My Jeans and Man Enough to Be a Woman and All Your Boy, All Your Girl. But if you don't want to fuck me, fuck off was definitely the track that I'm most famous for, and it did very well. And Safari released that with the B-side on the Crest of a Golden Wave, which sounded more like we did live for most of the other songs, really.
So did you write that track for someone in particular?
Yeah, I wrote that track. That track is about Jeffrey Salen from the Tough Darts, who went on to work with lots of other bands in New York City. When he was in the band, the Backstreet Boys, we played Club 82 and everything, and we had a little bit of a thing going. You have to realize that, like, when I used to get together, and even before I was doing my hormones and doing drag, I looked really good in drag. And so sometimes when like a straight boy like Jeffrey Salen would have a few drinks, I would look maybe a little too good for him, you know. And that's the way I looked.
Do you think he was flattered you wrote the song for him?
Do what? Yeah, he heard about that. I wrote the song for him, but
Yeah.
but he actually. It's funny because I was actually writing the song for him, and he was actually working. He actually is the one that worked out the chords for me, and I wanted to give him credit on the song, but then he died. Years
Okay.
later, I was going to give him credit because he translated the song for me. Actually, I had the song in my head already. I just dun 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 dun. It's a blues riff, which is already out there 1 million times. But what made the song quite, I think, remarkable was the lyric content. And he gave
Of
me the
course.
framework of the song, the blues. He wrote the blues notes for me. Uh,
Yeah. There's another story about that song that you had the keyboard player
that's
was a
right.
very young Jules Holland, and
Yes,
it was the first studio recording he
that's
ever
right.
made, and he was very
That's
proud of
right.
this recordings.
Jules Holland, the
Yeah,
guitar
yeah,
player who went on to have the
yeah,
Tube. He guested playing piano on "If You Don't Want to Fuck Me, Baby, Fuck Off."
yeah.
Hmm.
And the story I heard, which I got out of his autobiography, was that he was very
He
proud of this, of the playing on a track in a
he was. He was
studio,
so good.
and he didn't know what the lyrics were. You hadn't put the lyrics down, so he goes round to his parents with the finished record and say, "Look, I've just got this. This is my first visit to a recording studio." Of course, he plays it to their parents, and everyone was rather horrified by the lyrics. But I don't know if it's a true story, but it's a good
Well,
story.
the story is that he recorded the. I think we did the music first. The way usually recorded was I would do the music for. We would do the music first, then I would lay the vocal line over it. So he recorded the piano to the music. He didn't hear the words. So
Yeah.
and then he played the final song to his parents, and they heard the lyrics. If you don't want to fuck me, baby, baby, fuck off. And they were quite horrified him. But
I
that's
imagine.
so great.
Yeah.
I'm so proud to have Jules Holland on that record. That's really nice. He had a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
boogie woogie piano player.
And I know, again, it says in the book that he didn't always have it easy at gigs, and you played the Reading Festival at one time,
Oh God,
and people started throwing bottles at you. You
they
didn't
did.
get past the third number there.
We couldn't get past the third number. We played what was it called again?
The Reading
The
Festival.
Reading Festival. Yeah, I was kind of
Yeah.
afraid to play the Reading Festival really because they was putting us in between bands, that were kind of progressive. They put us in between Hawkwind and the Doobie Brothers.
Well, two great bands.
Two great bands, but not nothing like me. So putting me, they should have waited until they had a few more punkier bands to put on. If they had them, I think I might have been the only band of that genre, that only band of
Genre.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, the genre, a genre to do that kind of music. So anyway, we started out with Nighttime, and before I even, and it has a long intro on it. Before I could even get up to the vocal, before I even was coming out to sing, they were throwing stuff. They were throwing bottles. They were putting bottles in mud and throwing them at the stage and throwing all sorts of stuff at the stage before I even came on. So when I came
Yeah.
on and was singing Nighttime, I hate the day, take it away, I hate the day, take it away, blah, blah. They were throwing things, one hit me in the shoulder, one hit me down in the crotch, and the band were hiding behind the amps. And I'm standing out there on my own singing, and the band are hiding behind the amps. And we made it through Nighttime, and then we did Cream in My Jeans, and then we did If You Want to Fuck Me, Fuck Off. And John Peel gave us a shout out after we did those songs. Said, well, here's Wayne County. You know, want to fuck me, fuck off. He actually played the song a little
Yeah.
while after we had
Great.
done it live. Um, but during Fuck Off, so I got really personal with the audience. I shouldn't have done it. I said, if
Yeah.
you don't want to fuck me, baby, fuck off. Yeah, if you don't want to fuck me, you fucking stupid hippie, fuck off. Here's my ass. Stick it up it, motherfucker. I just went off on the audience, and they just went crazy, and I just went off on them. I don't think they'd ever been talked to like that before.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, because I know John Craig quite well, the
Uh-huh.
guy that co-owned Safari Records, and he said that whenever he dealt with you, when in those days when you were Wayne,
When
you were a real gentleman.
when I was Wayne, I was a real Southern gentleman. I opened
Yeah,
doors for people and took the chairs for them, and and said, yes, please, and no, 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 ma'am, yes, sir. I was like that. That's just the way I was raised. I was raised in the Methodist church, and I was raised to have Southern manners, and that's kind of ingrained in my head. Yeah, there goes the cats again. Is there any way you can get the other cats out of there?
I tried
Pickle?
hissing and scratching at me.
Pickle won't let you?
Yeah, Pickle won't let me get there. I just want
It's okay. It's just polystyrene getting her revenge.
It is Polly. Polly's
Yeah.
come back as a cat, a three-legged cat, and she's getting her revenge. Me talking about her after she's deceased. I shouldn't do that.
Anyway, you were in the film Jubilee, Derek Jarman's film, which had interesting cast: Adamant, Jordan, Toya. So was that fun to be in that film?
It was. Did you get Pickle out? No.
I can't. Can I take the other dog cat in the back somewhere?
Pickle's in the back.
No. Can I take King Tut?
Put him in the back. Yeah. I'm sorry about this. I have a lot of cats.
No, I like it. It adds another dimension to the interview. It's great. Don't worry.
Right. Okay. Now repeat the question.
Yeah. So I just asked you about the Jubilee film with Derek Jarman's film, which you were in, which had quite a high profile. And there's people in there like Adamant and Jordan and Toya.
Yes, it had quite a high profile. Had some really cool people, and being in Jubilee. But the best thing about Jubilee for me was that I was paid twice. They paid me once when I finished my performance in Jubilee, and then a couple of days later, somebody came by my pension where I was living and paid me again. And so I didn't say anything. I just said, yeah, I thought my performance was good to be paid extra money, because they didn't pay much. It was like 150 pounds, so I got paid 300 pounds.
Yeah, Toya told me she got 300 pounds, as you say.
Oh, so paid her more than me? How dare they?
Absolutely. But they paid you twice, so you got the same thing in the end.
I got the same thing anyway, but really, yeah. But at that time, I was better known than Toya, more known than Toya. I don't know why they paid her. Yeah. I guess her manager worked out 300 pounds.
Could be, yeah. So anyway, your first album, which came out on Safari, was produced by Martin Birch. And Martin Birch had a real rock track record, produced Fleetwood Mac, Deep Purple, Rainbow, Wishbone Ash. So that was an interesting meeting, you and Martin Birch.
Yeah, Martin Birch, he produced it using the name Melvin Slime, but it was Martin Birch who produced Deep Purple. He produced the first two albums, which the first two albums I'm quite happy with, except I thought he maybe threw a blanket over the sound. We were a lot more brash, a lot more harsher sounding live than on the albums. The albums really smoothed us out. I think a little bit too much, but overall I'm fairly happy with them. If I had things to do over again, I would have done things totally different, of course. But that's not looking hindsight.
Yeah, the first album is a lot. I just played them again the other day. The first album's a lot more raw. The second album. The second album is more like a rock album.
It is. It's a rock album. It's a kind of a rock opera in a way. It's just kind of my rebellion against established religion, which I really am. I'm known for being against established religion. Stormed the Gates of Heaven, of course, the title. And then the third album was produced by
David Cunningham.
David Cunningham, who's really sort of a progressive, really out there producer. He produced the Flying Lizards.
Well, he was the Flying Lizards.
He was the Flying Lizards, right? He was the Flying Lizards.
Yeah, interesting choice that one was.
Yes, it was an interesting choice. We were faced with the dilemma of just doing the material that we always were doing, and like any bands, we were tired of doing it. But we should have went on, and I think if I had it to do over, I would have had Martin Rush, who produced the Buzzcocks, produced the third album. We should get a regular rock and roll album. But we decided to go a little bit experimental and used David Cunningham. And the album is quite a stark album. I can't listen to all the tracks, like See True, things like that. But I was really happy with how Berlin came out, and Wall Street Boys, and a little happy with Wonder Woman. We're happy with most of the rock and roll tracks on it.
Yeah.
Waiting for the
And
Marines got a lot of attention, and Waiting for the Marines got a lot of respect.
Yeah. And of course, and I forget at which point, but Henry Padovani joined the band. Of course, he'd been in the Police when the Police was a 4-piece.
Right.
And he added a lot, didn't he, to your sound?
Yes. Henry Padovani from the Police joined the Electric Chairs, and we had before that we were a 3-piece, and that we became a 4-piece, and that was really good because he could keep the rhythm guitar going while the guitar did leads and things like that. And so it was great that we had more of a wall of sound from the guitar, from Henry Padovani's guitar. Henry went on to become really famous for doing that twang sound and everything. I turned him on to the Shadows and the Ventures and all that kind of music and all, and he just went right into it. And he used a lot of that real twangy, echoey sound on the Things Your Mother Never Told You, like Berlin and Wall City Girls.
Yeah, so when you say you turned him onto the Shadows being a British band, that's interesting that you turned him onto them.
I turned him onto it. And there's the Ventures. The Ventures and the Shadows are kind of like, the Ventures are the American version of all that twang stuff, and the Shadows are the British version. I turned him on to both of the groups, and also a lot of other, like Dick Dale, people who have that twangy sound.
Yes.
He'd never really heard that twangy sound before. He was just more of a rock guitarist, and I turned him on to all that, and he was so impressed by it. He became famous for doing that style of music. I was so proud I could turn him on, because I still completely like to turn people on to that kind of music. That kind of music has been so overlooked. That surfing sound, that sort of what do you call it? Amber, you call it that sound where the spy sound, you know.
Oh, like James Bond music?
James Bond music, you know, where they used to echo and everything like that. So Henry Padovani added a lot to the band's sound.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, and you got on well with him too, because you co-wrote with him too, didn't you?
Got along with Henry very, very, very well. Got along with Henry very, very well. There's a funny story. I don't know if I should tell it or not. Well, there's a funny story. They used to put, sometimes when we did our tour, they would put Henry's room would be next to mine. And of course, I would hear Henry when he would bring in girls and things. He'd bring in some girls. He'd be back there having sex with her. And I could hear them from the other way. And I'd be like, hey, I'm sleeping in here, you know, you're having sex, blah, 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 blah. And so one time he brought back this girl, and I could hear them through the wall. And I could hear this girl screaming, no, it's too big, it's too big. So from then on, all I had to do to get Henry crazy was to go, oh no, it's too big, it's too big. And Henry would get really nuts. Oh, come on, no, in that French accent. No, no, come. You know. Henry's a great guy. Henry's a great guy. I would love to see Henry again.
Yeah.
I'd love to record some tracks with Henry, really. I'd love to do some tracks. He lives in France now. He went back to Corsica, I hear. I would love to do some tracks with him sometime.
Yeah.
Since he really is in that twangy sound. It'd be great to get back with Henry.
And you also worked with Morgan Fisher, didn't you, for a few tracks too?
Yeah, he did the organ on Storm the Gates of Heaven, and did the organ on another track too, but I can't recall the other track. Can you recall the other track he's on, Morgan Fisher?
No, it's just that he's a good friend of mine, lives in Tokyo.
Oh, he is?
Now,
yeah, he's a very nice guy.
I told him I was going to be talking to you. He said to say hello to you.
He's a very nice guy. I was very impressed how great he was. Very nice guy, easy to talk to, and easy to, he did a great job on the organ on Storm the Gates.
Yeah. So just picking up something that Henry, going back to Henry again, said in the book, talked about you. He said that when you're on stage, it was like your kingdom. You had this authority on the stage, and you really owned the stage, and that came across in the live performances. You had this charisma that took over the whole stage.
It did, and that was one of the problems why me and Dick Manitoba had that fight, was because he entered my domain. He got up on my stage and threatened me, and I considered that the worst, almost blasphemy. I mean, the stage when I'm on it, it's my stage. I'm getting point across. I got the band with me, and we're up there working to get a certain point across and everything. And somebody violates our space. I feel like somebody's violating my space when they violate when they violate my space while I'm on the stage, you know. And I react very, very badly. I reacted very violently to him invading my space, which I shouldn't have done, but what's done is done.
Yeah, and then you moved to Berlin for a time.
Yes.
And you felt more accepted as a trans there?
Well, when I moved to Berlin, I felt more accepted as a trans woman there in Berlin, because Berlin is a really special place for trans women, for trans people, and people are accepting. I mean, they can be like this really straight dance club where people are dancing, and you go in there and people will be dancing with their husbands, and they have their families and everything. But you can walk in as a tranny and can't use that word. You can walk in as a trans person and dance with your partner and everything, and no one will even think nothing about it. No one will chase you or try to hurt you or to do anything. It's just, oh look, there's that trans woman there dancing with a boy, you know. And it was just so accepted there that I loved Berlin. I loved Berlin. I lived there for like 2 years, and I loved it. I just didn't want to leave once I performed, because we first performed there with the Electric Church, with Wayne County and the Electric Church at the Kino. We performed there after the first album, and then after the second album, we performed there too. And Berlin's a very special place for trans people.
Yes. So, when you changed your name from Wayne to Jayne, how was that for you? What did you feel when you changed your name?
Well, I felt at home with the name Jayne, because I really kind of inside felt I already was kind of more of a Jayne than a Wayne. And I was scheduled to play CBGBs. I came from England, and I was playing CBGBs, and I wasn't with the Electric Church anymore. I had a new band, which I never really totally planned to break up with the Electric Church, but that's another story. But I was had my band with Elliot, and we played CBGBs, and posters were all over town in New York City, and it had this pink poster of me, and it had Wayne County, and on the poster was a big X through the W and a J drawn in, very punky, very punk-wise. So that was my first time as Jayne County. But the Wayne was still there, so people would know it as Wayne Jayne County. I often refer to myself as Wayne Jayne County, because I have material released as Wayne County and as Jayne County out there. So if you go to iTunes, you're going to find Wayne County, you're going to find Jayne County, and you're going to find the Electric Church. So I'm there in 3 or 4 different headings, you know.
And did you find people responded differently to you when you changed your name to Jayne?
Not really. If the band were really spot on, if we were really tearing the stage up, it didn't. But when I first came back to England as Jayne, the press were very harsh to me, and were very mean to me. The British press were. They didn't like it at all that I was Jayne and had these tits. I have these big tits. They just weren't ready for it. My best reaction would be, I soon found out that my best reaction for a British audience would be if I covered my breasts up, if I covered myself up. If I was wearing a low cut thing and my tits were popping out and all that, and looking looking incredible, they didn't react as well. They didn't want to see my tits. Basically, I think the audience was still hung up on Wayne. And so my best reactions from British audiences were to cover up. Can you believe that?
Well, the British are a bit more conservative. That's the way they are.
Yes. In New York, I could just let it all hang out. But in England, I couldn't do that. I got a better reaction if people did not pay attention to my upper part of my body.
Yeah. So I know the last few years you've been a lot more into art. You're still doing music, but your art's becoming increasingly important. So just talk us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my art has become increasingly important, and I've had some really good art exhibitions and some really high-profile, respected galleries in New York, and where my artwork is going for a lot more money now, and it's just I've had shows. I've been in different art shows in Paris, Switzerland, all over the world. And my art is easier for me to do because I can sit on the couch and watch TV, play with my cats, whatever, and sit here and do my art. I go down in my basement and put my favorite CDs in and just draw, and my mama's cat Miss Kitty's down there, and she'll come keep me company, and I'll draw these incredible pictures and everything. I have these incredible, what I call penis drawings. They're phallic drawings, really, but they've got all kinds of faces and things on them, and arms and legs and things, and people find them quite interesting. People consider myself, one review was like cave drawings but from another dimension. They're not quite. I don't think you could compare me with anyone. I got my own way of painting, my own thing. But I'm also, still doing my music. Of course, we got a song out now that's doing really well with A.M. Taylor, and we recorded. She's my right hand woman now, writing songs and all. We're such a good songwriting team, me and Amber, that we have a song out. If you don't, and the song is I've gone blank.
I don't fit in anywhere.
Yeah, I don't fit in anywhere, which is like basically be the story of my whole life. I don't fit in anywhere, but basically it can be for any trans people or to anybody, straight or trans or whatever, that feels like they don't fit in anywhere. And back in the old days and in the new days as well, that's still basically one of the themes of a lot of my songs, is not fitting in straight, usual, normal society, standing out from society and being yourself. That's what the songs that me and A.M. Taylor are writing. We're going to do an album. The songs are going to be about alienation. And I've always written songs like that, like Man Enough to Be a Woman was about that. A lot of my songs were about alienation. Are you a boy? Are you a girl?
So when you look back now at the people you influenced, because we didn't mention Pete Burns, you influenced him. New York Dolls, you seem to have influenced. Alice Cooper, of course, we talked about David Bowie. You've really had quite an effect, haven't you?
Well, people tell me that. I mean, I've been told that. I've never really said I influenced this person or that person, but people come and tell me, you really influenced. I think that, when I see this person, I see bits of you. I mean, even people like Steven Tyler used to come to see me at Max's, and I used to try to make myself go further than Alice Cooper. I would say I'm going to go, when I was with Queen Elizabeth, I'm going to go a lot further than Alice Cooper went, And I thought I did it one time by sitting on a toilet and pretending to poop, but it was really dog food. I'd bring the dog food out and rub it on my body, and people would just be disgusted. And people would head for the doors. People would run. We'd empty the place. But that's what we wanted to do at the last song. We just emptied the whole auditorium.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I would say my influence is there. I can say my influence on a lot of things. Even people like the guy from Kiss, what's his name, Gene Simmons, even came up to me at an MTV party and told me, said that I just did this movie and I used you as an influence. I basically he dressed himself up like Wayne County, basically. But I have to wonder, because we did a party with Kiss years ago, way back. We did this loft party, and Kiss had hired a loft to do this late night rock and roll party, and they had me on the bill as well. But I was the headline. It was Wayne County headlining, and Kiss were one of the bands, and they weren't wearing any makeup back then. They were just doing what they were doing. They wore makeup, but not like they started doing later on. But I have to remember, because one of my whole things was the tongue thing, doing that with the tongue.
Yeah.
And Gene himself admits that he got that from me, doing the tongue thing, because he never did the tongue thing before he performed with Wayne County. Twisted Sister as well. Twisted Sister played with me in Long Island, and they had no makeup on or nothing. They were just this heavy rock band. And then after they played with me, the lead singer started dressing up, looking an awful lot like Wayne County. The makeup and everything was awful. On the first album, was very much like Wayne County. So I could see my influence in that as well. I can see my influence in a lot of the bands of that time and period. I think one of the good things about my performances was I showed other people how far you could go. I showed them new directions. I showed them that you didn't have to be afraid, just to do what you want to do, and to put it out there, and not to be afraid to put it out there. Should never be afraid to put your ideas out there, no matter how outrageous they may seem. You can do it. You can just do it. Just say you're going to do it and do it. You can do it.
Absolutely. That's a really good place to finish.
Oh, we're going to finish
do it. Yeah.
Oh,
great.
I'm just getting really into the talking.
Well, do you want to say anything else quickly?
Well, my message has always been just to keep doing for people to keep doing what they're doing, and just to do what they dream, do what they think they're doing. Don't just think about what you want to do. Do it. Actually do it. Get up and do it. You can do it. As punk didn't teach us anything, it taught us that you can do it yourself. And eventually, if other people pick on it, that's great. But just do it yourself. But basically, I want to close with also telling everyone, please go out and buy me and A.M. Taylor's new single, If I Don't Fit In Anywhere. Because that's what I'm working with. And that's what people are going to hear about now, is me and A.M. Taylor.
Okay. Good luck with that. Many, many thanks for your time, Jayne.
You're welcome.
And we'll maybe talk again one day.
Okay, great. Hopefully we'll meet one day.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.